All right, I believe that we are live, streaming to YouTube. Thanks everybody for joining. Today is another episode of the Cross Project Council meeting from OpenJS Foundation. Today is the 9th of January, our first meeting of the year 2024. So let's kind of get into things. I will share the meeting minutes in the chat again in case folks joined after shared it earlier. Please add yourself to the attendees, and of course, note takers are greatly appreciated. Anything? Let's get started. How about announcements?
We have a standards working group meeting following this. Information's on our public calendar if you're interested in joining. Actually, our standards collaboration space, we've rebranded.
Next, check the calendar for details. Great. Anything else? We have a meeting on Thursday too. Is that right? Next Thursday, maybe, huh? All right. Wait, no, I don't see it. Oh, is it on Wednesdays? When are we doing those? The program committee meetings.
We have one on, we have one on tomorrow, Wednesday, our program committee kickoff. So we'll just be going over the plan for the year, having some discussion. So looking forward to kicking that off. And then after this initial kickoff, the group will likely meet monthly.
Right. Great. Excellent. Moving on, board meeting updates. Is the next board meeting Friday? Is that what I saw on the calendar, or is it next Friday? Next Friday, the 19th. So I assume nothing new on that front today. Cool. I don't have anything on that either. So cool. Moving along, I will just say here, no updates. Anything on the staff update side? Waiting on legal, waiting on staff, waiting on website, any of that stuff? I suspect that there's nothing new for those issues as we just kind of came out of the holiday. So unless anybody's aware of anything, I will just kind of move along for today's meeting. So if we jump into the agenda then, the first issue is 1216, Google Season of Docs. Claudio, I know you've been kind of driving this a little bit. Do you want to share with the team what the status is?
Yesterday on the social meeting, pretty much just approached the idea again to Robin, and we are interested in applying for this cohort for 2024. We just need to keep an eye on the announcements page of the program because the application window hasn't opened yet. It will probably open the next following days. It's even in January. That they announced the program, then February actual application start, and then the foundation needs to prepare something and apply. But we will get into more details when we get the announcement from Google, so we can actually prepare ourselves.
Yeah, and we're tracking that. Ben and I met, and I found the old emails from Brian Warner. Actually, there were issues opened on the CPC for 2 years in a row, and sort of the process. So we'll follow that same process and open that up and kind of run point. The one requirement is, is that we make the application, but the projects must have mentors identified. So, but we'll outline it and open an issue as soon as that starts. Hey, Mateo.
Great. I was even looking too. I feel like, was there there was something in the repo, but I can't remember what.
I found issues for what, 21 and 20 and 21, I believe.
Okay, I found in there's a folder called mentorship and then a 2020 directory and then Google Season of Docs. I don't know if you all came across this, but that could be helpful too.
Okay.
I'll drop it in the chat there. And maybe I'll even throw it in the issue if that's helpful. I'm not going to add a lot of context here, but see also that link and that comment in the issue. All right, cool. So we will keep this on the agenda. We'll check in on it in 2 weeks, and that way we will hopefully not miss the window, and then we'll keep tabs on how things progress. Cool. Great. I will move on to the next item. Adopt a uniform moderation process for our code of conduct. Claudio, you opened this up a while ago. I think, if I remember correctly, referring to the Node.js moderation process, which has been around for a long time, is very robust and works well documented. If I'm not mistaken, this is something we will consider figuring out what we can pull from there once we get all of our other code of conduct stuff landed, which I'm sure we'll get into in a moment, but I'll just say we made a lot of progress late last year. Thank you to Paula and Toby. And so I'm hoping that we continue that ball rolling as this new year starts and get that the work that is happening right now wrapped up, so we can there are a few follow-on things that we need to do once we get this initial documentation in place, so that'll be good. Great. Next on the agenda is revisit emeritus stage definitions. Ben, you opened this up in October. Toby commented. Anything you want to add, Ben?
Maybe a little advice on how to push this forward. One option here is like I can take a stab at this and post something for folks to react to. Or if there's folks who are particularly interested in this, maybe we could do a working session with me on this one. So I'm open to ideas on what's the best way forward. I do think, this wasn't urgent back in October. As we're progressing with LFIT and we're auditing projects, it would be good to have this in our back pocket so that we don't spend time auditing projects that should be sunsetted. So I think this is probably the right time to be working on this one.
All right. Do we have a label for like potential? Oh yeah, CPC working session. Okay, so the label's already on there. So that's something to consider in future working sessions, or maybe even an ad hoc one, because I feel like we do have a lot of stuff that we want to get done. So we might have a few working sessions and perhaps even some ad hoc ones. But yeah, I'd be happy to look at it with you too, Ben.
Okay, so for this one, sounds like an ad hoc working session would be best, right?
I think so.
Okay. Any volunteers?
Yeah, I'll sit on that. Sorry, I have a head cold, so sorry.
I'm writing these down. Paula, Robin, Ulysses, did you also raise your hands? All right. I promise it'll be fun.
Yeah, I've gone through a lot of the projects too and found some of the dormant ones. So sometimes it's sort of obvious, but it's not documented, right? And then it's a little bit of chasing around. So it would be great to put some structure around this.
Okay, I got Paula, Robin, Ulysses, Joe. If anyone else wants to come and join the sunsetting party, reach out via Slack and I will invite you.
Sunsetting party.
That was under the revisit emeritus stage definitions?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, I just wanted to make sure I put the notes under the right place. Thanks.
Thank you, Michael. Great. All right, so moving along, and I will just put a note here too. We'll revisit the moderation process. This after current COC work plans. Great. Okay, so moving on to another hot topic, revamping the travel fund. I know we made a lot of progress on this late in the year. And would be great to keep this moving forward. And I'm thinking as we're going through here, what we should do for next working session. The two things that come to mind for me are the travel fund and the code of conduct work. I feel like the code of conduct work just needs to be reviewed. I don't know if we need to meet for that. So maybe, Ben, what are your thoughts about getting together on the travel fund next week?
I think that would be great.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And do we think, are we looking at like the rubric? Is that kind of the stage that we're at?
That's where we're at.
Yeah, so folks that are unaware, we've been revamping the community fund, the travel fund, and trying to figure out, you know, a different process rather than opening an issue. So we've got a Google form. We went through and validated that we're getting the right information from folks, especially to try and evaluate whether we approve or not. I think all of this information should be in this issue, links to these things. Of course, all of it is malleable. If somebody's got something they want to share on it, just reach out to Ben or me or whomever. And then so basically we took the information from the form, put it into a table, and then are figuring out now like how we weight the different bits of information that we're getting from folks to evaluate you know, approvals for this. And did we decide, I can't recall, Ben, did we decide to do this like on a quarterly basis, chunk up the budget quarterly and think about it that way? Or did we even decide on that? I can't recall.
I'm 75% sure that's what we decided.
Yeah, I thought so too. But we'll
I'll
look
have
at
to
that
double
one.
check. Yeah.
Yeah. And then with the call, if you already know ahead of the time, like our standards, Collab Space, for example, they've already indicated what their anticipated travel will be, at least, you know, so you can sort of hold that on some predictable travel.
And I think, you know, this is all kind of, again, like workable, you know, we can figure it out as we go. But the thinking is, you know, for example, there might not be a lot of travel January, February, March. And so that quarter would roll into the next quarter. And so I don't think we'll be like scrimping, but at least we'll kind of be able to pace ourselves a bit, you know, so trying things out, seeing what works, and go from there.
Yeah, and I think we should try and ship this. You know, it's not gonna be perfect, right? But we can adjust it as we go. But I think it's important to make adjustments based on, you know, like the real experience that we have with it. And so like shipping this in January would be really a good good idea to try and hit that if we can.
Yeah, and I even wonder too, Ben, if you think like if the front end of this is ready to go, we should ship that. And as things come in, we could still be evaluating the rubric and stuff. I mean, I would love to have it all in place, but I'm just saying the year has started, so maybe we should have the front end in place already.
Yeah, I think the thing there is just there's a lot of updates to the documentation that have to be made. So I can do maybe like a PR for that, and that'll give folks a good chance to like read through all this stuff in detail. And then yeah, like the form is, you know, it's totally there, everything's there. So yeah, I think it's mostly just updating the documentation. Sorry, Matteo, I see your hand raised.
Well, I think we have to ship it for January, because projects might start planning for Collab summits and things like that. So it's if it's and right now the last discussion we had at the board was to not to you know, having a travel fund be subjective of better rules for it. Okay, so to be honest, it's possibly a good thing to maybe target having some of the rules to be presented at the next board meeting. Essentially, and yeah, you know, I'm just trying to put out so that we can confirm if that works, and I think it would be, but again, we need to give a heads up to the rest of the board on this topic. So
I totally agree. Sorry, Robin, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, yes, I think the hardest part still needs to be done on that rubric and prioritizing. And so if you,
But I think, I wonder,
I was gonna say, if you really, I encourage folks to attend the working session, if that's something you have strong feelings about.
yeah, and I feel like we should prioritize for that board meeting, essentially, you know, as much information as we can give them for now. And maybe even the working session, prioritize, get the front end released. And then, you know, we can do an ad hoc meeting too if we want. I'd love to really actually hustle to get this done ASAP. I agree with you, Matteo.
I think the front end's done though. You know, it's just
yeah, it's the documentation, like Ben said. So, you know, Ben, maybe I'm happy to get together with you and we can work on it together. We can divvy it up.
same.
Yeah, maybe I'll put something on the calendar for Friday for us to just work through stuff and get a GitHub PR going.
Yeah, that sounds great. So I guess just to recap, summarize, the plan then is we'll have an ad hoc meeting this week to work on the front end and the board stuff, and the working session will dig into the rubric. So
Who wants to come to the rubric party Friday?
Yeah,
Raise your hand.
Yeah.
In my mind, the rubric, like the thing that you'd want to present to the board is the rules that are beyond it's up to the CPC members to approve or not, right? Like the rubric I think is good, and you pushed it, like Ben's got a good outline, and whether it's +3 or +4, that's worth defining. But I think in the end, that, as I understand it, is not like if you score 5, you're in, you score 3, you're out, right? Like that's more guidance for the CPC members to make a discussion of who's approving. I think the more interesting part to me to make sure presented to the board is, are there rules which constrain how the CPC members are going to make those decisions, right? You know, like if there's a hard rule that says you only get it once a quarter, that's something that, like, you know, it's not subject to, it's not information for the CPC members to make a decision. It's more of a rule to be followed. Those are the things I think that would be good to extract and be prioritize presenting. So I don't know if that's like in the working session or whatever, but I just didn't want to make sure that we forgot that. Just wanted to highlight that I think that's one of the key things to have on that priority list.
Once per quarter, or once you're talking per person, or
it doesn't matter what the rule is. I'm just saying we should have the clear list of, like, we're basically saying before the governance was the CPC members basically approve or not, however they like. We're moving to, here's some additional rules. You know, the rubric is like, here's some additional information. That's always great. But I think we've also discussed, here's some additional rules like that one. I don't know if we've agreed on that one or not, but there's a list of those. And those are the things that I think really affect how it's managed beyond helping the CPC members make a better decision. It's more of saying, and here's how we're going to agree to constrain ourselves.
Yeah.
And having those clearly listed out and agreed is what is, I think, will be most interesting to the board, right?
Yeah, it's like the rubric is a little bit subjective perhaps, but these are hard and fast rules that we're talking about that we should express as well. Yeah.
Right. Like the rubric, I see that as a tool for me as a CPC member to look at and say, it scored 15. Maybe I'll approve this. It scored 1. Maybe I won't. But the decision still is back to myself, I think, right? Like we're not, unless there's a rule that says you must score 13 to, right? And I don't think we've discussed that. So I see that as a really useful information to the CPC members. And like in that context, totally makes sense to me to like get something out there and just see how it helps us or not. And then we can tweak the numbers. It's, you know, whether we get them exactly right or not, doesn't matter so much because we can still apply our opinion, right? Like in interpreting the number. Some of the other rules might be something that are more hard and fast. And so we want to make sure that, you know, we agree to those and have that listed. And that's sort of what maybe the board will expect in terms of the different way of managing, right?
Yeah, the rubric, I agree. We do that with our program committee. When the CFPs come in, they give scores and you look at the ones that score the highest and then everyone does a gut check. Are those the top 5 or for example? So it's not like a black and white sort of, yeah. That makes sense.
Sounds good. So we'll try to do all of that. I would love to do all of that before the board meeting.
Yeah.
An ad hoc meeting and a working session, 2 hours to really kind of dig into things, get documentation in place, kind of have, something of the rubric put in place, but also, like you said, Michael, some of these other, rules or whatnot that we want to have in place too.
Yeah, I think for the board, like 2 slides. First slide is just a little bit about the process, like how we'll proceed. Second slide are these rules, right? Which will enumerate in our meeting on Friday as part of the writing the GitHub documentation.
Great. Okay, good. Cool. All right, unless there's anything else, I will get back to the agenda here. I will just say, we'll do an ad hoc meeting this week and working session next week and prep for board meeting Friday up next week. Great. All right, cool. So the next 2 are code of conduct issues, the update and refactor code of conduct policy and processes, and then the code of conduct action plan. I'm pulling up the action plan because we've got a lot of detail in here. But actually the other one is a pull request. So I encourage folks to take a look at both of these next 2 issues if you haven't already. I'm scrolling through the PR. There's some change requested from Tierney, which I think was just making sure that we had the policy doc in with this PR. And so I haven't looked at this in a little bit. Let me see when the latest changes are. 3 weeks ago. Okay, so I will maybe sync with Paula and Toby some more about what the status is on this one and how do we get this over the finish line.
Yeah. Joe, if you like, I can reach out to both you and Toby and ask if we can have like a quick call.
That'd be
I think
great.
we're almost there, but it's unclear to me what the remaining pieces are.
Yeah, me too. It's you take a couple of weeks off and next thing you know.
Yeah, I personally think it's, pretty much there in terms of like if we landed it and tweaked it afterwards, it wouldn't be a bad, thing, right?
Yeah. I just want to make sure that Tierney's request is there, and then I think that was the only thing that was really blocking. It looks like all the other comments are addressed. So hopefully we will have something for folks to really review and merge sometime soon. So we'll ping the group maybe in Slack or something, maybe even in an email if once we're feeling good, so that everybody gets a good eye on it and we can get that merged. Great, because we do have a few other code of conduct related things that we need to get going on too. That'll follow along. I'm really excited about it because it's going to clean up a lot of issues and old PRs and stuff like that. So it'll be great. Paula and Joe will get with Toby to figure out last remaining bits on this PR and move it forward. All right, cool. See above. Great. Next item is standardize on collab spaces. I know that the standards collab space is I think fully adopted the collab space nomenclature and updated things. And I think we just need to do a little bit more work on the other remaining quote unquote working groups and update documentation. But I think higher priority things have gotten in front of this. So If I can, I'll work on this. But yeah, like I said, there are other highly important things to get done first. So we'll see. We'll see. No update, essentially. Moving on, the next one is issue 1106, the conflict resolution training.
Yeah, I'm not getting a response back from the LF trainers, so I recommend we'll go for a plan B and look for other consultants. So if you know of anyone, otherwise, I'll reach out to some other projects.
Great, thank you. And then the final one on here is create some documentation webpage to describe the collaboration model of OpenJS projects. I know this has been
Yeah, Matteo, I have a draft. I think you and I need a working session. It's a little dry, let's put it that way. So just need to add a little pizzazz and a
We
little.
did some work together when we were in London, and then it sat
Yeah.
there. In,
I have a cleaned up draft, but you and I need probably just a conversation, a little working session. So
yeah. If we can schedule it earlier, that's usually the CPC working session are
Yeah.
very late for me. So
Yeah.
it's
No, I'm good. I'm an early
yeah.
bird.
Thank
We're
you,
talking
thank
birds.
you, because
great. So let me see. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. That was the last item on the agenda. And I don't see anything else on the meeting issue. But you know, at the bottom of the agenda is the review regular things like dates and reminders and such, which I am reminded that we really need to look at elections. One of the director seats ends is at the end of February. Yeah, February 28th. So that's not far away. But I know we've been talking about, you know, perhaps revisiting our election cycles, maybe grouping things a little bit differently, to maybe like 2 elections a year and getting everything done in that session. I don't know exactly, but this is another thing that we should probably figure out sooner than later. Ben, what are your thoughts? I see you making a lot of faces.
Sorry, yeah, I did a little bit of poking around on this earlier before the end of the year. Essentially, like I just looked at all of our roles, when the terms are, tried to rationalize what might make sense, and maybe I'll just briefly talk about it, and then we can talk about how we might want to proceed on working towards getting something a little more solid. But it feels like 2 elections during the year make sense. Essentially a late summer, like something in August, and then probably spring, like around May. That works well from a when people are least likely to be out on vacation, right? There's no holiday. Well, there's no big holidays, right? It's not like trying to do something in December. And it also allows us to have staggered elections, right? So we're not, you know, trying to do everything all at once, which I know has been overwhelming for some people. So, yeah, I mean, I'm happy to make a more formal proposal on this, or to work with people on it. Like, just, you know, let me know what the best way is to sort of proceed.
I think a straw man wouldn't be bad if you wanted to like chunk it up into 2 and we could look at it and say, oh, well, there's a conflict in this way or something. We could start to hack on it. That would be great.
Okay. Yeah, that's no problem.
Yeah, but I'm also happy to get together and chat with you about it if you want.
I think this is pretty non-controversial. So we'll just put it in GitHub, have people react, and you know, this is just my personal opinion. It's not strongly held, so people should feel free to, you know, suggest other things. But yeah, I'll put something in there.
I don't want to muddy the waters here, but you know, there has also been talk about we have CPC at-large voting members and CPC regular voting member elections, and in the past that's been confusing. We've talked about maybe just having like CPC community voting representatives. So I don't know. We do have, you know, 25 minutes if we want to talk about this a little bit. I'm happy to do that. Do people think that we should take those 2 roles and maybe, you know, make them 1 role? And we don't necessarily have to decrease the amount of people, but just simplify what the roles are. you know, not unlike we did with the directors, the board seats. You know, there was a community one and a CPC one, and we just said, screw all that. They're just, you know, CPC board directors. What do people think? Any thoughts?
That makes sense to me. It was definitely confusing. I think if we're not decreasing the number, then we're just simplifying the process. So that seems very smooth.
Yeah.
Even
Okay,
the people
call it out.
applying for those positions use different terminology and were confused themselves last year. So-
Yeah.
Yeah, I certainly, I'm sure I used the wrong terms and
Yeah, and we had, you know, people would run for both and which makes sense, but then you're like, why? Yeah, it just seems like we should just, you know, make it one role. We can have, you know, we can have 4 people slots if we want, or whatever we think is best. And we can even say, you know, we expect these community voting roles to represent the you know, at-large projects as well as regular members and the community at large, you know. I mean, I think we kind of all do that anyway. We're all not like fighting for node, you know, or whatever. But still. All right, if there's no objection, then Ben, maybe include that, and we can do that too.
I'm actually a little confused. So can you?
Sure. So
let me say why. Like we currently have sort of like three different roles, right? You've got impact, at large, and regular. And so the purpose behind those the purpose of that representation feels a little different. So I just wanted to sort of clarify like what the thinking is, like what's the desired end state, and does the intent behind the role representation change at all? That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Let me take a stab. I think the impact will remain the same.
Mhm.
The way I think we had rationalized the at-large and the regular is one represented the CPC and one represented the projects. Well, the CPC sort of represents the projects and the community
Yeah.
at large. And so that's where the confusion happened.
I think that we wanted to make sure that we had fair representation across the board. And so the thinking was the impact projects have their own dedicated voting reps because they are the you know, foundational projects.
Yeah.
And then the at-large projects were like, well, we should have at least a couple members that sort of represent the group. You know, so we had, I think, you know, up to 2, if I'm not mistaken. And then we also thought, well, we have all these regular members, but they don't have voting rights. Maybe we should have a voting member that represents the regular members, you know? So we're trying to like keep the representation sort of fair in the voting. But the reality is we rarely vote that much. And we also are all pretty invested in the overall community. So I think these distinctions really aren't that important. But I think having the representation is still good. So if we just call them, you know, community members, community voting members, however we want to phrase it, then that just sort of covers the bases and sort of spreads the voting out to just not be just impact projects, you know, and a couple of other reps there.
Okay, yeah, I'll need to just poke around and like understand what those changes mean from a process perspective, right?
I don't, it may be in the CPC bylaws probably. So that's where the change would have to be made. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to, well, actually, possibly.
And then legal would have to review it because it's a bylaw voting change. But, you know, I think I hear consensus, so I can help go through that and redline it.
Yeah, I'm sending you a couple of links in Slack here. Voting numbers. That's not all of the information, of course, but I sent you the 2 that I put in the chat here earlier.
And I can't remember the limit if we had, it's not like we have like one board's silver seat for every 10 silver members. The question is, as the number of projects potentially grow, do we expand the number of reps? And Michael, you might know this from your drafting governance days.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think we have just, you know, there's 2, if I remember correctly, you know, that represent the non-impact projects. I think we have 2 that like represent, non-voting CPC members.
Because I would advocate to add once we hit a certain threshold as we grow. Because I think our vote, again, it's very rare that we vote, but we do vote for the board directors, and having more representation is a good thing, I think.
Yeah, I think we should just reevaluate that stuff either at every time a project is added or like every year or something, depending on how rarely or often we add projects. Because like the spirit seems to be percentage based and not hard coded numbers. So another alternative is we could just decide percentages and change it, but like I don't know if that's worth it either.
All right, cool. So, Ben, I hope that's helpful. Again, I'm happy to talk with you, look at the stuff together and talk through a bit. Okay. Great. We have 19 minutes. Is there anything else we want to talk about today? Do we want to look at the rubric, get some thoughts from folks who are here that might not be able to make it on Tuesday of next week?
I had a really great spreadsheet that looked at what it would be to apply the rubric to sample applicants. I thought that was a really good tool to look at if anyone here is interested.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing that. That does sound very interesting, because I think that's a great way to say like what kind of info it would have told us before, right? So
yeah,
I think when we did this, we used real life examples and talking through it. So if we do that, I'm all for it, but I would suggest that we do it in a private session.
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
I also like made some guesses on like whether or not people would qualify under DEI, and I just want to just be sure that everyone knows that I was making some stuff up. So there, and this is why I was hesitant to share, because there's like real names in there, but all the information isn't necessarily accurate for the purposes of the exercise. So
yeah.
just as long as everyone is very clear on that,
I
yes.
might just remove the names.
Yeah,
like,
and anonymize the names. Yeah, I think that's a great
Good.
way to do it.
And I will stop the stream now. We can start to look at that if we want. So to wrap things up, thanks everybody who's been watching the stream. Thanks everybody for joining another episode of your Cross Project Council meeting. I will see you in a week for a working session, or in 2 weeks for the next meeting. Keep your eye on the calendar, and talk to you soon.